Well, the weather for the whole of the south of England will continue as it has for the next few weeks. It's going to be hot and moist, with temperatures rising steadily as time goes on. There's a chance of steamy moments as we move into the... sod it. We never wanted to do this. We never wanted to be weathermen and women making innuendos about hot atmospheres and drizzly countries. We didn't want to be child-friendly. We didn't want to bang on about being for over 18s only. We want to talk about our sexy adventures. We want to be lifestylers, leaping from bush to bush as we sail down the rivers of British sex clubs and mountains of crazy experiences. The cheeky purple mamba, the liquid silk pumped liberally into our hand, the rodeo classic brief harness complete with Tantus curve, the Enjoy Pure One stainless steel dildo, the hot octopus digit, the ever so short messages on Fab Swingers, the sexy friends on Twitter, and the mighty vanilla alternative. With my best girlie by my side, we'd swing, swing, swing.
Get in the gym or to your car. With our advice you could go far. We fuck things up and we make mistakes. And talk about our sexy dates. It's getting hard for this to rhyme. Just as well, cause it's bed hopping time.
Hello and welcome to the Bed Hoppers Podcast. My name's Mr. H.
I'm Mrs. H.
Today we have a very, very special guest with us, the delightful Cate from Wanderlust Swingers. We've brought her on board to talk about making the most of events. Welcome, Cate.
G'day guys, how you doing?
All the better for seeing you, of course.
Very good. Me in my hoodie in my frozen office on my third floor. Delightful.
Well, you've given the game away now. I mean, I was going to say that you're looking radiant and you're wearing a wonderful dress and we've never seen you look better.
I know, how did I get my curls that amazing and, you know, my symmetrical wings and everything else? No, it's not true. Hoodie. I am wearing a shirt though, which we were quite interested to find out a little bit earlier as we sat here talking. But yeah, really excited to be on the show. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, I'm interested. You said you had wings on.
I was actually just going to ask you the same.
Eyeliner, like eyeliner wings.
Oh,
like
okay.
Symmetrical.
In my head, it was like a pair of angel wings.
Fun fact, I can't do wings.
I can't either. I actually bought a new pen and I've been trying every second day and it's going disastrous. So
The cat eye things, I can't do them either.
So, yeah, I've never tried. I'm not going to. I'll just get someone else to do them for me if I ever need them.
You're really good at drawing. May I suggest you learn how to do it on me?
Shall I start practicing, like put it on my iPad and just drawing over photos?
I want perfect wings.
I think you'll be flying without wings.
Move on wings.
Oh, okay, thank you. So the reason, as I said, that we've brought Cate along with us
Makeup
today
tips.
is not makeup tips, although they may come in useful because we've got an event coming up that we're working on together. We've got the Red Heart Party and we wanted to talk a little bit about making the most of events. So, you know, how do you prep for them? How do you go in with a really positive attitude and how do you literally get your best bang for the buck from going to an event?
Yeah. How do you avoid just sitting in the corner wishing you'd mingled more? Because, you know,
it's true. It's true. We spend so much time and money and we get excited and everything else. And then if we aren't, I think, intentional with our actions, then we do walk away going, well, that was, I have regrets. You know, back in 2016, I remember us going to these massive events and we spent so much money. We've been saving for like a year and a half. And I walked away going, well, shit. And now I'm not going to get that opportunity again for another couple of years. So, you know, it's true, man.
And I think, you know, like you say, you prep for so long, they seem to be on the horizon for ages, these events, and you're kind of building up this giddy excitement. And we've done it. We've absolutely are really guilty of doing that, especially in our earlier days, in that we'd go to a club or an event and just sit in the corner together. And I think that's, you know, and then we come away going, well, we could have just come home and had sex, really, rather than going to a club.
Still, you can get all hyped up and all excited for this event and you're like, yeah, it's going to be amazing. And then you ruin it by getting like completely spangled and just like can't remember any of it, or you just go and fall asleep in a bathroom.
So
speaking from experience.
Well, we've certainly covered that a number of times.
Don't drink too much because you're nervous.
So there is a bravado to it, I think. You know, a couple of drinks is fine, but I think if you are worried and nervous, probably drinking is not the solution to that. And we can certainly say that from a level of experience, right? So I think rather than go down a route of what you shouldn't do before you go to an event.
Here's all the times that we have fucked up. You are welcome.
Yes. You know, we've made an entire podcast career of that particular line. But looking at things positively, how do you, Cate, prepare for an event? What's your your ritual to go through before you get there?
Well, the first thing I think is once you've chosen the event, choosing the event's the first big thing. But say for argument's sake, you've chosen your event, it's going to be the right event for you and the way that you approach the lifestyle. If you're aware of that yet, or maybe you're brand new and you've got no idea. But some of the things that I do now is I start to think about what do I actually want to get out of the event. I think those are the big first things for me. What do I want to get out of the event? Because then I can sort of start to frame that in my own mind. But better yet, I can actually share that with, if you have a partner, if you're at a couple situation, you can share that with your partner as well. And the reason that I do that is to have some level, I guess, of responsibility. I want them to hold me a little bit accountable. And these don't need to be really grand things like, well, they can be, it's up to you, but like, I want to have jizz all over my face. It can be something as simple as, look, I'm actually quite an introverted person and I just want to try and have a conversation with 3 new people because that's a really big step for me. Or maybe I want to take my top off because that's a really big step for me. So it can be something like that. And so when you start thinking about what do I want to get out of this event, share it with your partner. They can, in a very non-pushy but more, helpful way, kind of hold you accountable to that. So that's some of the things that I do before I even think about anything else like costumes or etc. I think about what do I want to get out of the event.
That's a really strong bit of advice. And I think we did a very similar thing. I remember going to a social event earlier on in our sort of career, for want of a better phrase. And I remember us talking about like, we're not going to sit in the corner. We are going to go and we're going to speak to 5 different people, and we've got to do that this time around, and we've got to push the boat out and do that. And then we started talking about, well, actually, how do you do that? How are we going to just go up and have conversations with people we don't know? Because I think we were very out of practice of doing that. We kind of had our circle of friends, and it's easy to chat to your friends and your relatives or whatever, but actually, how do you introduce yourselves to new people?
Comfort zones and all that. It's really hard sometimes to get yourself out of that. You've got each other and you get your real estate and your little nook and you're like, yes, I've got a seat. I'm not going to leave this seat all night because I don't want to stand in heels or whatever. But then you find yourself just like stuck there.
I honestly think it has to just be a point where you just throw yourself into the pit and almost throw yourself into their line of vision or their circle or whatever. What Daryl and I have found quite helpful, especially on nights when some nights you'll go to an event and maybe you or your partner are feeling particularly energetic that night or charismatic or whatever. So if that's the case and one of you is feeling a little bit more charismatic, then allow that person to take the lead. But in some circumstances where Daryl and I go and we're like, oh, we're both a little bit nervous or we're both a little bit unsure, we actually tag team, we take it in turns. So I'll go and introduce myself or us to one person or a couple, and then next time it'll be like, okay, it's your turn now, like kind of moving those energy bars along. So again, really, if you are in a partner situation, utilizing your partner as truly your wingman and trying to feed off each other's energy as best you can, but you've just got to throw yourself into it. It sucks. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it'll pay out in dividends at the end of it when you realize you've actually done something that you set your mind to.
I'm a big fan of having like a task that we set ourselves or a means of getting into the conversation. So this particular event, I remember the way in which we introduced ourselves to people was actually we gained control at this event of the jukebox. I don't know why anyone would let me near a jukebox. Cate is shaking her head in sadness here. Stepping well away.
True story.
But it gave us an in to talk to people to say, hey, we've got control of the jukebox. What song would you like us to play for you? And actually, that was a really good way of just opening up conversations. And we met people through doing that we still talk to many, many years later. The other thing that I really like doing as well to sort of get into that conversation is to just offer people a compliment. I really love your dress, or I really love your shirt, or your shoes are great. And normally that just gives you that open to have a regular, normal human being conversation. And often that's the first step. Once you're involved in that, it's not too bad, but that sort of hurdle I find is often having that first few words.
Although, picking up on what Cate said about she really wants to get jizz on her face, I think that'd be a really good conversation starter. You've got a little something on your nose.
Oh, it's all the jizz I had on my face from earlier. Thanks for noticing. It really makes my shin shine. Makes my skin shine. The other thing, Mr. H, about what you just said about paying people compliments, to flip that around, I would also say, especially if it comes to costumes or a theme, make it easy for other people to pay you compliments or talk about your outfit. Yes. Do them a favor. So if it's a costume or it's something like that, or wear something that's going to be unique, maybe it's going to inspire a conversation, because by doing so, you're actually helping out the other people to come over and approach you as well. So it's a talking point for you, but you're actually helping everybody else out. That's something I have said that for years. I remember the first time I went to Desire and I got Daryl a really interactive costume, and it was just the best for us because it actually helped us get out of our shells a little bit, more so than what we would have if we were just wearing like a normal costume from the costume store.
I mean, great, you're going to encourage Mr. H now, but he needs even more extravagant costumes.
I know, I was just saying costume the entire time. I'm looking at Mrs. H going, I hate costumes.
All right, I don't hate costumes. I know I sometimes come across that way, but what I do hate is when Mr. H decides that he doesn't need one costume. No. He needs like 5, and they have to be ridiculously huge ones that won't fit in a suitcase and involve at least 3 pairs of shoes and headdresses or something. So it's just like,
Okay, but the flip side of that is each of those costumes generated a level of conversation and interaction with other people.
Costume,
so they were
conversation.
all totally worth it. Probably, definitely, absolutely.
Why are they so big though?
Because they're fun. The other thing that I want to mention in terms of conversation starters is if you know sort of 1 or 2 people and they know somebody else, get them to introduce you, use your connections and form even more friendships. You know, oh, do you guys know them? Can you introduce me? It's not rocket science, I know. And I know for many people, they'll be like, why are you teaching me to suck eggs? But actually, we found that to be a really good way to sort of meet new people, expand our friendship group and just get to know other people that we wouldn't have spoken to before.
Yeah, and the other thing, just before you even get to the party, I mean, talking about that introduction side of it as well, what we generally tend to do is we do 2 things. We put up a travel notice. So if you're on a dating site that allows a travel notice, even if you're traveling in your own city, you can do this. And you put up a travel notice saying that you're going to this event. Or if there's an event and you can register on or RSVP on the dating site, do that as well, because that's going to highlight other people to you and have you highlighted back to them. So I always do that, regardless of where we're going around the world, regardless of whether it's in our own city, I will RSVP and I'll set up a travel notice. And the other thing too is if there is some form of connection or chat or group or community for the event, you know, get stuck into that as well if you have the time, because again, those kind of pay in dividends, because by the time you get there, you probably see a friendly face and you can then feel more comfortable walking up to that person and then slowly expanding that circle. If, you know, you haven't been to this event before, you don't know a lot of people.
It's a tricky balance, I find, because one of us, me, loves the group chats and likes to be part of that. And one of us, not naming any names, doesn't really enjoy that particularly.
I don't enjoy it. I just don't have the time to devote to it as much as you do.
Yep, you'll find the same thing for Daryl and I. You won't find Daryl in a chat. Is pretty rare. If he is in a chat, as you two well know, actually, he kind of dips in and out, but it is a rarity to actually. I think didn't one of our old chats actually say, "Holy shit, Daryl's in the chat," was the group name of the chat.
Pretty much. Oh my God, there's a dog in the playground. Yeah.
You know, and that's the way that we operate as well. So it works well for him. He really likes that face to face. And if that's you, then crack on. If you want to try and make those connections beforehand, you know, those are some of the tools that you can do that with, right?
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about prepping for the event. I find that moment when you actually get to an event, where it's when the nerves become the greatest, is when you're actually about to go in through the door and experience it.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that, Mrs. H?
Well, I'm normally desperate to get inside because I'm too cold waiting outside in the queue. So I'm like, get me in there now. And then I want to go to the bathroom and fix my hair and my makeup. So I'm actually like champing at the bit to get through the doors. I don't actually experience the same level of nerves as you. However, you are very much more around the, have we got everything we need? Have our tickets right? Have we done everything in advance we need to? So I understand that it's like a level of planning for you that makes you nervous sometimes. So actually one of the things you should be very hot on is making sure you've done all that in advance. So actually when you're there, you can just be excited to get in.
I don't think Cate will ever know the amount of times that I checked the tickets and the stuff so that we could go to the New Year's Eve party.
You were checking them whilst we were in the line at the club going, holy fuck, is this right? Is this right? I'm like, it's a bit fucking late now. Like if we can't get in, then hey, we're going back to the room. We've got 3 bottles of wine and a half a packet of chips, and that's our evening.
Not a bad evening, to be fair. I mean, I wouldn't.
Not a bad evening at all.
I've certainly had worse evenings.
I mean, for me, it's like once you're on a roller coaster and you're going up that slope, and you're kind of like, well, I'm committed now. I'm in. I don't want to bail at this point because I've planned so much for this. And let's assume that you've got all your stuff sorted, you've got your tickets, you've got your phone ID ready, whatever it is. So you might as well just use that kind of energy in a positive way while you're in the queue and be like, what's the first thing you're going to do? Are we going to head to the bar first and get a drink? Or are we going to go straight to a locker and grab somewhere we can stash all our belongings? Have a little bit of a game plan about what do you want to do? You know, or do we want to find a little space to sit down?
That's a controversial move, I think.
It's controversial, but sometimes it's nice to gravitate to an area where you can just have 5 minutes of checking that you you're ready to dive into a crowd if that's what you're going to do. I like to go to a bathroom personally, check my hair, my makeup, and make sure that I look good.
Do a mafusive shit, and then she comes out absolutely relieved, chilled
Had
out.
to make it weird, didn't you? No, I like to go in there and just touch up everything and make sure I'm good to go, because I just feel that settles my confidence levels. Because
I like to go into a club and touch up everything.
Fine.
I mean, I'm just replaying it back to
Being
you.
a saboteur.
Yeah, I feel like you're like 3 smart-ass remarks away from losing Mrs. H on this episode.
I always am.
Yeah, it can be a double-edged sword. I see what you're saying about that seating area, but if you do know that you're someone who just needs to sit back and observe for a little while, then by all means do it. But maybe what you can do is set yourself a time limit and say, okay, this is what I know I'm going to need, but instead of allowing myself to sit here for 2 hours or 3 hours and be a bit of a wallflower, again, if that's what you want to do at the event, fill your boots. But if you are wanting to get out there and meet people, then try to set yourself some sort of timeline as to, hey, how long are you going to sit there for? But I do enjoy the idea of a game plan. That sounds really good because, yeah, it's something that not a lot of people would think about. And yeah, maybe those tensions or that excitement or that fear or the newness of it all could make you a bit deer in the headlights. So when you get in the club, you're like, what do I do? But if you have some sort of like, I'm going to go straight to the bathroom, straight to the bar, I'm going to find the lockers straight away, or I'm going to go talk to somebody and do a tour straight away. Like if you've got that in your mind already, then it allows you to settle a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think one of our mistakes that we've made is that we've gone in and we've just sat down and then we've become territorial over the real estate. And I think setting yourself a time limit to be in there, and let's be fair, you're not going to be in a club for hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, it's unlikely that you're going to be in there for more than 5-6 hours, really. And that's a very long night. So you could probably get away with standing up for some of that time.
Yeah.
Or at least a lot of people can. So I think what we've tended to do in the past is grab that seat and be like, oh my God, this is the best seat ever. We've clearly got the best real estate. And then just taking turns going to the bar and sitting there and just watching the world go by. And as a result, because you're in your little bubble, you don't talk to anyone else.
No, you just observe and then like passes you by and you just end up being like, all right, we just stay the whole night sitting down.
Yeah, and the same thing can happen if you're with people that you've met before, friends. Like if you're going as a mini group to an event, you know, when you're sitting down like that, whilst it's it's an amazing fun time and you're with your mates and you've got this amazing environment around you and everything else, but oftentimes our body language then is closing ourselves off to the possibility of meeting anybody. So even if you are sitting there and people are like, oh, they look interesting, they're probably not going to come over because of the closed body language. So if you are in that circumstance, you know, one of the other tips for success, I guess, to make your event successful would be to be a bit mindful of that. You know, how is your body language looking if you are sitting down in a group of people? Maybe it's closed off and that's fine. You know, you're not interested in meeting anybody else. But if you are legitimately trying to meet people, be mindful of that because it's already nerve-wracking enough to walk up and strike up a conversation out of nothingness. But it's more difficult if people are looking a little bit closed off. People are just not going to come over.
Well, it's an interesting one that you mentioned this because actually the last time we went to Penthouse Playrooms, we went with Secret Stag and Secret Vixen. And one of the things that the girls challenged the guys to do was just to get up and start a few conversations with people. So, all right, we bet you won't, go up and chat to them. And of course, like red rag to a bull as a challenge, we're like, oh, well, we can do that. Of course we'll do that. Within 2 minutes of going out there, we'd found 2 other couples and we'd sat down at the table. In fact, so much so that sort of 15, 20 minutes later, the girls were kind of wondering where we'd gone because we were just sat there and had joined this bigger group.
Just started another night anyway.
Yeah, an absolute night by ourselves. But that was a really good way of actually kind of going, introducing ourselves and explaining our dynamics and starting that conversation, really. And then when you two came over, we were able to introduce and say, oh, here they are. This is what we all do and all that kind of
We
stuff.
sent you out as like little sentry drones.
Little envoys, yeah.
Just go and do the work and then let us know when it's a good time to come over.
I mean, the other thing about all of this too is that this is all for naught if you're not setting yourself up for success before you even get there. And what I mean by that is being hydrated and slept and rested and fed and all of those good things. I know, just like, the things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis to stay alive as an adult. Those things, they still do matter when you're going to an event. But I think sometimes we just think we're just these Energizer bunnies and it's like, okay, we haven't gone out clubbing for however long as a couple and now all of a sudden we're going to throw ourselves into the mix. We're going to go to the club at 9 or 10 or 11 p.m. and then we're going to party until 3 and 4 in the morning. Bitch, you can't do that without preparation. So, getting hydrated, getting enough rest and everything else before we get there, setting yourself up for success is something that I think we've all forgot to mention, but is so, so important because I can tell you the number of times around the world, Daryl and I have gone to a club and we're like, not really feeling it tonight. And then I think, oh, that's because we're up at 6 and then we had this and then we did this and we did that. And I'm like, so we're just knackered. And we've come to the club like idiots, paid the money to get in here and gotten all jazzed up. And now it's a waste, because we're just so bloody tired or not interested in putting our energy out there and meeting people.
Yeah, I think we've definitely fallen foul of that. We've just overdone it and then not enjoyed the night as a result. Right.
There is something to do with pacing, but also I would say that, Cate, you are the hydration master. Never have I drunk so much water in my entire life as to when I've had an evening out with you.
She's always at your elbow with this glass of water, isn't she? Like,
where the fuck did that come from? It's another one.
Yeah.
Actually, if you talk to Jay and Angie, they have a name for me in their household, unfortunately, because I'm doing the same thing to them all the time. How much water have you had today?
It's a good tip though, because it does reduce your sort of ability to get drunk a little bit, I suppose, and also means that the hangover is far less painful the next day if you are going to have one. So it's a good tip. And eating, I think, is so important. The amount of times we've just skipped eating and gone straight out
which is unusual because I hate skipping eating.
I know, which means that you're more grumpy. Everyone gets to see hangry you, and that's definitely not you at your best.
Likes hangry me.
Yeah, and that's why we carry snacks around at all times.
Little go-to snacks in your bags.
That definitely helps. I think there is something in that being prepared for the event as well. So knowing kind of what you're going into and knowing what you need to bring. So, if you are going to a place with wet facilities, for example, do you need to bring a towel? Are toys allowed? Do you want to bring your own toys? Obviously, there's the prep around bringing your own condoms and lube and making sure that you've got a variety of those. All this stuff kind of helps make your event much more successful, because the last thing you want to be doing is rushing around trying to find all this stuff in the club to see if they sell it, see if they've got it, see if you can borrow a towel if they don't provide them automatically. That really takes you away from any potential sexy time, I find. Not that sexy time is the goal, but if you're there and
well, if it is the goal and you've not done that, then, you're kind of up shit's creek without a paddle. The other thing, too, is to honestly check the rules of the club, because when Daryl and I, we said this on our podcast, we went into London City and we were really excited. And we turned up to the club and Daryl's looking pretty hot. He's got his, really nice dress shirt on and really nice designer jeans. And we get to the front of the club and the bouncer's like, no ripped jeans allowed as per the frequently asked questions, as per, dress requirements which are clearly labeled on the website. And I was like, yeah, my bad. So with those preparation pieces, I would also check what's on the website for information, is the bar BYO, like we said before, or is it purchase your own drinks? Do they have wet facilities? Do you need an identification to check in? Do they have lockers? All of those sorts of things I think are super important to make sure that you're actually even going to get into the event to start with.
It's really valuable advice. And I remember speaking to you folks just after that. And it was definitely an interesting occasion. Fortunately, you were close enough to be able to get changed and come back to it, which was...
Thank God, because if we'd have lived further away, like if we'd have gotten in there, it was like an hour or two drive or an hour train ride or whatever, and we didn't have alternative things, like that would have just been a bloody disaster. And that was a rookie error, let me tell you.
Well, I'm pleased to say I'm not pleased, but we nearly made that error ourselves, and we drove up to Vanilla Alternative. And 3/4 of the way there, I turned to Mrs. H. She said, "You put my shirt in the car?" Yes. The one thing that she needed to do. And there was this look that said that I would definitely be driving to a supermarket at 8 o'clock on a Saturday evening in an attempt to find a shirt that I could wear for the club that night. Is that fair? Is that fair?
I mean, sure, I'm not responsible to pack your clothes, but on this occasion, yes, I did forget to pack his shirt. And my God, he didn't let me forget it.
But it is important to get your outfit right, and the outfit is an essential part of the evening, I think.
Oh, it can make or break an evening for me, I think. If I'm uncomfortable because I haven't chosen wisely, then you just spend all night messing around with it and wishing you hadn't worn it.
And fidgeting and stuff like that. I remember because in the chat group for our event, we were recently talking about, and it was one of the ladies who said, single lady if I'm not wrong, what should I wear? And a bunch of people chimed in and said this or this or this, and some people rightly said, what makes you comfortable? What do you feel sexy in? And, I did make the point that you can tell when someone's uncomfortable in an outfit. Yeah. If something isn't sitting right on you, you feel like it's sticking to you, or it's showing lumpy, bumpy bits in parts that you don't want to show, or, it's too tight or it's too short, or you're sitting down and it's too tight around your thighs or whatever, you can see that person actively fidgeting engaging, and they're not really paying attention to what you're saying, because the entire time that you're talking at them, all they're thinking about is, geez, I'm uncomfortable, and so getting the outfit right, I know it seems like such a small thing, but it is actually so imperative to having a good night, unless you're one of those people that just doesn't think about these things. And then my name's Cate, my email is this, and please help me.
One of the tips that I've sort of observed, I guess, rather than been part of, I think, is that we've been to a number of events where people have their own business cards. And often this is at events where...
Get guilty. I've done this before.
Well, I think this is a good tip. And I think, we have our show business cards, which is a way to get in touch with us, but it's fairly easy to remember the name or whatever for us. So I don't think we struggle too much for that.
Yeah, Bed Notches, the most popular podcast in the UK.
It's belt notches.
Oh, sorry.
Bed knobbers.
Bed knobbers,
bed wankers.
It's probably closer to the truth. But I've seen people just take a number of business cards, especially when they've been or heard of people doing that on the cruises and at bigger events where there's lots of rooms or a takeover. And it's a really good way of staying in touch with people. They write their room number on it or whatever. But often when you're in a club, it's really hard sometimes to hear. It's really hard. You don't have your phone with you often. You can't really write down people's details, and it can be difficult to get in touch with other people. So I've seen people take along a business card so that they can go, there you go. We'd love to speak to you in whatever environment, or we'd love to keep in touch. Here's our information. I love that. That takes the sort of just like the amount of times we have met people and we've been like, what was their name again? And they're like, secret couple 2319 AB exclamation mark, and you're like, fucking hell, are they the exclamation mark ones? Are they ones without the exclamation? And is it the right ones? And you can't see the profile photo, and this sort of thing is really, really helpful to have there. I mean, you could do the cheap version and just write it down on a post-it note, I suppose, and there you go, this is us. But it's less cool if you can flip out a business card, sort of,
or the upspec version, and create your own QR code that goes to like a separate website. That could also be an option if you want upspec. It's controversial. I'm not a fan of the business card.
Are you not?
I'm not. We had them before years and years ago, because we were listening to podcasts, and podcasts back in 2015 were like, you have to have a business card. Everybody has to. If you don't have one, you're an idiot. And we went along to an event in the US, and I was like, oh my God, we're in business cards. And at the time, I think the minimum you could get was 250 of the things, which is just, who's handing these out?
Did you give one to everybody?
Yeah, so like the coffee guy was like, the barista was like, I don't actually need your business card. Thank you, lady. But it was a bit strange to me, because for me, I think that once you're making that connection, it's almost like, okay, and on to the next, and like, here's my card. That's one way it can happen. And so you're like, well, hold on a second, we're still in the middle of a conversation. Well, the other thing is that most of the time people aren't public, and so therefore their photos are not on their business card. And so if you can't remember that someone's name is John and Jill, how the hell, if you get 10 of these plain Jane business cards with these random screen names on it, how are you going to remember who's who? And I remember walking away from that event, and we collected about 20 odd business cards. Fun fact, I found them about 2 years ago and we're moving here and threw them in the bin. But I had no idea who was who, because they didn't have any photos or identification methods on them whatsoever. So although they were like, here's our kick and here's our this and here's our that, I had them in my pocket, because again, I got given 20 of them. Thank God I actually had pockets, because if you're a woman, where are you going to put this bloody card? And we just walked away going, I don't understand the intention here. I understand it for, like, I know people do it on the cruises and the big events. In a club situation, it seems a bit strange and foreign to me. So I don't know. I think we're agree to disagree on that one, Mr. H.
I think it has its place occasionally. I would say that but you're right, if everyone brought a card, then it would be impossible to tell everybody. Unless you write notes and you're like writing on the card as they give it to you. The small dude with beard, lady.
Red sparkly shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Talked about Star Wars for half an hour. There we go. And, I can absolutely see it being a pain in the ass. But
it is a tough one. And I think that's why, let's take the big events. Let's take the 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people events out of this equation, because that's just bloody too hard anyway. But say it is at a club event, or it's a small takeover or something like that, and there is a chat function or a community function, that's where you kind of quickly want to make those connections. I think that's the easiest way to do it, because trying to remember names is a nightmare. Oftentimes you won't have your phone in the club, as you said before, because most clubs have a no phone policy. And so, as soon as you get out of there, like, you're in that chat group, and you can kind of try to make those connections as quickly as possible, and then you can take it offline to a different chat. That's really the only way I can think that is logical, but it's also a minefield. I don't know.
Mind you, I think you did at one point send us about 50 of your business cards. I'm sure we've got a ton of them kicking around somewhere.
You probably do. I was probably like, here, have some business cards, guys.
They were a funny size. They were too square to fit in my purse, but not quite wide enough to fit in a different pocket. I was like, why are these such a funny size?
But you know what's funny? We gave hundreds of those, well, not hundreds, but loads of them away to different friends. Like, here you go, have one of these guys.
And you know what? I think that was actually version 2. That was version 2 of our card that actually had our faces on it, because I, after the first event, got Jack of not knowing, and then I was like, okay, here's our face, here's our pictures, so you guys can clearly remember who we are. And then, I had to order like 250 of those things, and clearly I just gave you guys a bunch because I was like, well, either that or I can build a house out of them. So
I needed them for a Gambit cosplay. That's what it was. Tons of them.
Exactly. Hey, do you guys want to talk about how to maybe take it to the next level? Because we've kind of spoken about, like, in the lead up to the event, once you get in there, what to do, setting your expectations or your intentions. I mean, how do we move to the next step, guys? How do we make this happen? If my intention is to walk in there and I'm like, I would like to play with somebody that I find interesting, what's the next step?
Very good question, Mrs. H.
Okay, all right. So let's assume then that we've managed to get out of our little real estate corner. We didn't sit there all night. We've mingled and we have made a connection with a couple. Is this what was happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope you put some effort into there somewhere in the middle of that with flirting and such.
Yeah.
Do we? Well, let's talk about the flirting bit. Like, how the fuck do we flirt? Like, because
fuck knows. Why are you asking me?
don't
honestly,
call me fuck
Penny.
knows.
No, this is an interesting one, okay? Because I know that you and I, Mr. H, don't tend to gravitate to a dance floor, okay?
Yes, I was about to bring up the dance floor thing.
Yeah, and I know, Kate, you do like a bit of a dance, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, interestingly, we had this conversation, like me and Mr. H, going back a few weeks. It's not that we don't like dancing, we do. However, if I'm going to dance on a dance floor, it's because I want to do some proper, like, 80s music, cheesy dancing, whatever. I want to be there for the duration, and I'm not really using it as a connection sexually. I'm doing I want to have a right good laugh, and I want to be.
You're here to party.
Yeah. I don't use it as a sexual chemistry connection in any way.
Mm-hmm.
My want of connecting with someone is normally a slightly more cerebral approach for me. I like talking. I really, really, really enjoy the connection, talking to someone. Striking up some banter, some chat, finding some common ground. I find it difficult sometimes in a club to do that because the noise levels always mess with me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think I'm deaf particularly, but I do struggle to hear in a club very often. And if there's dancing happening, or at least very close by to me, I really, really struggle and I have to move somewhere a little bit quieter, which is why I tend to favour that kind of finding a seat a little bit further away from a dance area, because that's where I need to make my connection. Now, I appreciate that's not for everyone, and some people really love to get on the dance floor and dance with someone that they find attractive and maybe make that connection that way. So I know if it was us, like, trying to do that, I think we'd probably favour the let's chat, because that's kind of where our comfort zone tends to be.
Well, there is a theory that you play to your strengths, and my strengths is certainly not dancing in any way that is sexy. However, for me, it's about, not to say it's a strength, but the conversation, the sort of leading that conversation and just kind of finding out more about people is kind of where I feel most comfortable.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that I'm flirting. And you say that I'm flirting all the time, but I am not cognizant that I'm doing it whatsoever.
Well, you're pretty good at it then, if you don't actually know you're doing it. And yet I find it to be quite flirtatious. So maybe that's a good thing, because it's not false and it's not forced or anything. You're naturally flirtatious. Maybe when you like someone, it will come across in your flirty conversation.
I don't know. You've accused me of being flirtatious with everybody, and you've accused me of being various sets of teases. Insert appendage here. You've accused me of being a cock tease and a muff tease and God knows what else, just because I'm chatting to people and I'm enjoying that conversation. So it's a tricky balance, I think, and I don't think I naturally slip into a flirty movement if such a thing occurs.
Do you talk like that to everyone then, maybe?
Yeah, maybe that's probably where I'm going wrong.
Human resources keep calling him in and he doesn't understand what's happening. I don't. He keeps getting red carded. For me, it really depends on the environment. It depends on the club, my mood. It's a whole host of things. If I would say if it was just Daryl and I, we didn't know anyone at the club, we didn't have any previous connections, we weren't there with friends, I would say that, and it was a club where it had mingle and dance floor opportunities. Because another thing too is that you got to remember the way that different clubs are laid out. Not every club affords itself a big mingle area or a big dance floor. You can't, maybe you've got one or the other or whatever. So it does depend on all of those things, but if I'm just going to say run-of-the-mill, normal club, Daryl and I don't know anyone, our general thing is we will start talking to a couple and start flirting or talking there, and then we will move to the dance floor, and that is the lubricant almost to then moving to the playroom. So that's the general way we do things. So we'll make that cerebral connection. We'll see if we actually have any kind of connection, if we like them as people, the rest of it. Then we'll dance with them. Then we'll move to the playroom. That's how we would generally do it on an average night at a club. It's a little bit different if we know people because, you know, then that kind of shapes the way you may just go from talking and laughing and having a drink to like, let's go to the tantrum room. You know, those sorts of things. So it really does. It depends on the event for me, the style and who we're there with, I think is the biggest one. But I would say what we've just all said is pretty different. So maybe that's a good talking point for your partner.
For you, what makes you feel comfortable? I mean, like someone may not feel even remotely comfortable, like attempting to dance and flirt. And, you know, the two things maybe don't ever become compatible for some people, whereas others probably like, oh, fuck, I don't know how to make conversation. Let's just go and let the music do it for us. And, you know,
exactly.
That's also cool. I think it's just, what do you want to do with that person? And what vibes are you getting from them? And if they're like, hey, do you want to come dance? Actually, even if you're not like 100% into dancing, you might be like, well, they're asking me, so let's try it. I
think there's definitely something about reading the room. I remember going to a club with a couple and chatting to them for forever and a day, and the more we chatted to them, the less interested I became in them.
Oh yeah.
And then at the end of that, and it was really clear to me that the body language wasn't there. We weren't, even by my standards, I wasn't flirting, and I was becoming more and more withdrawn. And then they were like, "Oh, should we go in the playroom then?" And I was like, "What point?"
Maybe half an hour ago, but you know, then you started talking about kicking penguins into the ocean, and I'm out. I checked out.
It would have been probably 2 hours before that. But and genuinely, we had gone to the club with them. Or not with them, but sort of alongside them, I suppose. And I think it's about reading the room and understanding or kind of getting a feel for how people are interacting with you. And I think you can normally tell if someone is into you. Even I'm getting slightly better at that. But that can take practice. Sometimes, you know, the winningest people just make out with each other, but, you know.
The winningest people definitely make the moves in the dining area. It is a good, I mean, talking about the winningest people, which are the most awesome of the peoples.
Yes.
The winningest people.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that. I mean, sometimes it's just good to, if you want to make that next step, is to just say, can I kiss you? I think that's a really simple, I think we overcomplicate matters oftentimes. Yeah. And to me, that's a very simple way to start gauging, can you move things to the next level? You know, is can I kiss you? Or I'd really like to kiss you. If you don't want to say, can I kiss you? You can say, I'd really like to kiss you, or would you like to kiss me? Or things like that. You know, you can phrase it however you want to, however it's going to make you comfortable. But I think that's such an easy way to transition, and I don't think we give it enough merit just generally.
I have heard that you are the best at kissing, and I would like to sample those delights. How do you feel about that?
I mean, that seems slightly over the top, but hey, you do you.
And that's what I end up doing most of the time because of that approach.
There. 23 years he's been saying that to me now.
And it still works.
Has to announce it when he wants to kiss me.
But there is that, I like that level of honesty and openness. And I think the important thing for this is that someone can obviously say no and they can say yes, but you'll never know unless you ask. And we've talked about this a lot of times. And it's sometimes, you know, I'd rather someone said no and we got that painful rejection bit. And it may not be that painful, but just that bit over with. And then, you know where you stand. If you want to find somebody else, you can do. If you want to throw a smoke bomb down and disappear, you can do. But I'd rather know and understand where I stood in that situation. And likewise, if someone's sort of, you know, throwing themselves at me, not that's ever happened, I'd rather be able to say, no, thank you if I'm not interested, and appreciate they'll accept that answer.
Yeah. And I think, so all of these things really add up to how to have a successful event, but something we spoke about having your intentions there, but what we haven't really spoken about is how to make sure that during the evening, you're still going to having a good time. Do you guys do any kind of like mid-event check-ins, or I mean, maybe did you do that in the past and you don't do it anymore? Like, how do we make sure that, you know, as a single as well, I don't want to discount singles here, because you do need to check in with yourself. Like, are you pushing yourself too far? Are you making yourself uncomfortably going over what your boundaries are? So, you know, I don't want to discount singles here, but obviously as a couple unit, we tend to check in a little bit more with each other. So do you still do that? Do you recommend it to people? What are your thoughts on kind of that mid-event check-in to make sure, you know, we are still having a successful event, or, you know, we set intentions and I wanted you to hold me accountable and we still haven't spoken to those 3 people that we said we were going to do. So do you do that?
We do. I think initially what we tended to do was take ourselves away from the environment, or as far away from the environment as we could, and have a bit of a conversation, particularly if someone was asking us a question question about whether we were interested or not, and we'd say, oh, we're going to put the shutters down and go over there and just chat for a few minutes and then try and work out where we're at with things. Probably not the most enthusiastic response that they were looking for, but right for us in our earlier days. Since that point, I think we've become much, much better at sort of understanding where we're at with each other. And I think it's much more a sort of a hug and a kiss and just a kind of, you're right, and you're right, okay, that's cool. I think there's been enough times when it's gone wrong and we've not enjoyed it that I think we're more at a phase now where we'd say if it wasn't going right.
I would agree. I'm universally terrible at asking you every 2 minutes if you're okay, to the point where it becomes really irksome to you. But I genuinely do, because I don't want to fuck something up or miss a trick somewhere. So I'm always asking Mr. H, are you okay? I just like the confirmation that he's fine.
Well, this is true, but I think that's very true of sober you or mildly inebriated you. Drunk Mrs. H gives less fucks, and that's been an interesting thing that we've had to navigate.
Yeah, I can be a bit of a jerk when I'm drunk, but I've got so much better, I think, at navigating.
At drinking more.
No, I was going to say I'm a lot better now at managing my sobriety a little bit and not being such a jackass. So we found a bit more of a happy medium of things. And I like to think that I still check in and give you a kiss and a hug, now and then, say, you all right? You enjoying yourself? Like, is everything good?
I'm thinking of one particular incident that we've talked about on the podcast quite recently, where that didn't happen and it all spiraled out of control. So I think, as much as, you kind of think, yeah, we're growing and, pardon me, as much as we think, we're getting better at it, don't think for one moment, gentle listener, that it doesn't go astray every now and then, and we don't have to recheck in and relearn those basics, because it does. And I think often you can get into a cocksure space with this whole experience. You can go, yeah, we've got this nailed down. We've been around the block a few times and we've done a few events now and we're comfortable and confident. And then we kind of forget to do the basics like the checking in and making sure that we're okay and that everyone's comfortable. And that's where we fuck it up again. So for me, it's about just having those sense checks in place just to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, agreed.
So your pro check-in is what you're saying. Definitely you would recommend it to most everyone.
100%. I think.
Okay. And do you think it requires, to take that to the next level, like, do you think that it requires a conversation? Or, because I know, again, when we first started this journey, there was there's a lot of people back then were saying, like, have hand signals, and or have like a secret word or whatever. And I remember at the time, I think we were like, oh shit, that's what people are telling us we have to do. So like, Daryl, we have to have like this hand gesture and we have to have these secret words. And then I forgot it after I'd had 2 wines. It was like 3 pats on the leg if everything's going great, but like 5 if it's going bad. So we think it's necessary, but do you think it needs to be a conversation, or can it be something a little bit more simple?
I don't think it needs to be a long conversation. We tried like you tried we had that same advice. I think we probably listened to the same things and watched the same things, and we went in with some hand signals, and Mrs. H just ignored them and
fucked it up completely.
And it just and just completely forgot about it and did her own thing. So and leading to actually one of our worst meets ever. However, I think there is something to be said for just checking in, even if that's you okay, you comfortable. That might be all you need to check in. And I think because if you're not, then you probably need to step away from the situation just to have a bit of a conversation to work it through. I think the whole doing the animal sounds or the hand maneuvers or the secret handshake, whatever, in the heat of the moment, that kind of goes out the window. You might as well just be honest and open and say, I'm not quite there. Can we just have a quick moment to chat and work this out? Or if you're good, just be enthusiastic about being good. There's nothing worse than someone not really saying anything. And it's very true of consent. You want someone to be happy and interested and looking forward to the experience. And if your partner's not showing those signs, I think there's probably something where you need to step away and kind of check that again.
I would agree. I think it's probably more detrimental if you don't do any check-in at all and then you go and do something that can't be undone, because then that will just lead to... But
you, as an adult, one of the things we have found definitely is that if you're not feeling right, you have a responsibility to tell your partner, if you've got a partner. If you're a singleton, then you have a responsibility to yourself to, if you can, step away from that situation and either find a friend if you can, or if you need to talk to security or the bar staff, or depending on on what it is, or you might just need to take a moment to yourself. You might need to pop to the loo and just have a moment to think through what's going on and be comfortable with things. You shouldn't ever do anything that upsets you or puts you in harm's way or that you don't feel comfortable with.
I agree. I think it's not someone else's responsibility to completely be an adult for you. You do need to have some level of accountability and recognise it. If you have to speak up and say something, then you do, because you're an adult, so you can make these decisions and these choices. And
You've come this far.
yeah, exactly. If you're adult enough to take your clothes off and fuck someone, then at least you can do is show your partner some courtesy by telling them if that's not what you're feeling. So
Yeah. What about that? So, I mean, we've spoken about like the entire event, but my thoughts on kind of that post-event come down self-care. I don't know whether you guys experience this, whether it's something that you occasionally experience or what have you, but I do find that after a successful event, after I've had a really good time, or after I've been looking forward to something for 3-4 months, whatever that looks like, and then you finally get there, the night's amazing, you have a great time, you make connections, you dance, you drink, it's great. And the next day you realise there's nothing on the calendar to look forward to anymore and it's over. Do you ever experience, it's what we call like a sub drop in BDSM terms, but do you guys ever experience that?
100%. And, I think there's a couple of things. One, where we've run our own events and been involved in running events, the next day is where we get the most questions about people going, when's the next one? We want to have something in the diary. And I think that is a form of that drop because, we've experienced it. We've been to your events. I think for PCAP in particular, that sort of the last...
You did not want to leave that pool.
Oh my God.
that was...
Our biggest regret was not booking an extra day.
Yeah.
100%. We were so fucked off that we had to leave. We were like, oh man, we could have just had a lazy day, like just taking it easy and we really wish we'd booked an extra day, didn't we?
But it was that absolute come down of having had a really good time, having had something that you've looked forward to and that you've really enjoyed and you've made new friends and connections, and then having to leave it and go back to your regular life is very difficult. It is a drop. And
especially when those bastards just dotting around the pool still. We were like, oh man.
And I was actually in the pool and drinking and having a good time too. So that's it. After the event's always my time to have a good time. So that's like my next day or two, I'm just living it up. You haven't seen me party like as hard as you see me party after the end of my events. I'm like, fuck yeah, cutting loose. I've got no responsibilities anymore.
Hey, no party like an after party.
Exactly. So I think it's not just sub drop from or post event drop from having those highs. I think if you do choose to play as well, and this especially is important for singles. If you do choose to play, there is an element of resetting. Having this like, wow, that happened last night, and I'm on this like amazing high, and it was so different and so new and so unique, and I've built it up and all this sort of stuff. And geez, now it's gone, and you're in your pajamas, kind of watching Netflix. It can be a moment where you need to recognize those things and figure out what's going to be some self-care for you. I found that host events for me are things where I'm like, oh, amazing, and then like, oh, life is dull now. And I'm like, oh shit, so I do need to actually generally tend to book something for myself like the day after or the weekend after or something else to look forward to. It doesn't have to be as lavish, but just a massage or a bath and some wine or something like that. Again, might not be for everybody out there, but it's something that I've recognized in myself now.
One of our greatest joys, I think, is having friends in the lifestyle that you can debrief with. And that's been invaluable. And I think that when you've come back from an event, having friends that you can chat to and just kind of talk it through is so helpful, just to kind of process all of it, because there is often a lot of processing around what's happened and what's gone on. And often this stuff is positive, but it just takes a while to sink into your brain. Like, holy shit, were we doing that?
Or things you've missed.
Yeah.
Or you just think, oh yeah. Or someone reminds you of something great and you're like, oh, totally, I remember that now. And it brings back a really good memory.
And I think doing that has been really useful. So just having a call the next day with friends or having a Zoom chat or whatever and talking that through. And also, to be fair, the podcast kind of helps because, if you relive it a little bit and you're talking about it, it gives you an opportunity to kind of share that experience. And that does sort of ease the pain. But equally, I mean, we tend to book things pretty quickly after we've done it. It's like when you go and see a gig, right? If you haven't been to a gig for a while, you go to a gig and you go, wow, that was amazing. Why don't we go to more gigs? And then the next day you book another gig.
Yeah. Guilty. I went to the the comedy show recently. I came home, sat on the couch, booked tickets for a different comedian in like 2 months' time because I was like, that was amazing. Why don't I do this more often? Oh, yeah, because I can't afford to do it more often.
But that's the thing, and it's really nice to have a treat that's ahead. And like you say, that treat could just be small. It could be a massage. It could be a trip into town. It could be a nice meal or whatever it might be. Or it could be, how do we get our next fix? And what is the next...
Like the junkies that we are.
But this is why I like having a visual diary for things. I mean, I can't bring myself to just commit everything into some kind of like, I don't know, digital thing.
Digital is still visual, dear. It still exists.
I like to see something tangible in front of me. I like the paper where I can see everything plotted out and mapped out, and I'm like, oh my God, look, I can see it because it's written in pen in like a few months' time. Whereas if it's like in the internet somewhere.
This would explain every time I send you an email, you write back to me in pencil.
It's not visually popping for me because I have to go and search for it. Whereas I like to see it in front of me and I can then see that I've got exciting things to look forward to. That's how I work. It's just my...
Like the tangibility of it.
I like writing things down and like looking at them and go, yeah, look at this happening. It's exciting. Old-fashioned girl.
There is absolutely something in that. And I think it's good for your mental health. It's like when you go on holiday and you come back, and it's nice to have an extra day off in a couple of weeks' time that you can look forward to, just to kind of ease the pain of going back to work. If you
got something to look forward to.
Yeah, I like that, and we tend to operate like that. I think it's interesting because often the events that we're going to at the moment are ones that we've been involved in sort of organising or had a hand in. So it's for us. It's sort of often it's a treat just for us, I think. And like you said yourself, Cate, it's like after an event, it's the day off afterwards that you get where you don't have those responsibilities and that you can just enjoy that to the most.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say would be, like, if you were going to wrap something else into this as like your best piece of advice, what would be the last thing you would add to how to have a successful event? Is there anything else you're thinking of?
Take some flat shoes.
Take some flat shoes. I mean, it's actually not bad advice.
But it's brilliant advice. I really wish I listened to my own advice.
Put some water and some snacks in your hotel room before you leave for the club for the night.
That helps. That's a classic bit of advice.
Definitely take a spare pair of shoes. If your high heels are killing you, then at least you can change into some flat shoes.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the biggest bit of advice that I can give to people, I think, and I'm thinking about people who might be new or might be nervous, is to use the facilities that you've got. So if the event has a chat, if it has a Zoom beforehand, if it has a pre-meet, if it has, well, one assumes it has hosts. If you're feeling nervous, be part of that if you can. Ask the host questions if you've got them and just be involved, because there's nothing worse than just sitting at home and being worried about something that you've paid money to enjoy. We, as hosts ourselves, we want everyone to have a cracking time and to go away, having loved their experience, but loving the community even more. And I think if you don't use those facilities, then I think you're missing a trick, because they are there to help you. And, I think some of the events that we went to, in our sort of very early days, they didn't offer those facilities. The hosts weren't approachable. They weren't useful. And actually, I think as a result, we worried ourselves to death about just simple things now that we've experienced that we know they're simple, but when you're new, they're not. So if you can, go in with a positive attitude, but also kind of don't forget that there's a whole host of support there to help you get the most out of your event.
Yeah. That's a good one. And I think too, like going along with that, as much as, you want to use the options available to you, and I mean, thinking about new people, but also thinking about people that are maybe a little bit more OCD, maybe a little bit more planny, that do really want to think things through. Try to do your best maybe to loosen that off a little notch, because coming in and thinking the entire time, well, shit, we've now got to go and explore, and we have to get into the wet room, we have to get into that jacuzzi, because if we don't get in the jacuzzi, we're going to regret it, or we have to do this, we have to do that. And you don't really allow any time for you to actually enjoy the event. So my other thing would be to, as best you can, try not to overthink things. Try not to put too much pressure on it. Just try to be in the moment, try to have a good time. Yes, as we said earlier in the episode, set those intentions and try to keep yourself accountable. But if you can, release the reins a little bit, because otherwise you're also just going to be just not in the moment, really. And that there's nothing worse than kind of realizing that you had all these opportunities presented in front of you and you didn't take advantage of them.
Yeah, you don't want to kill yourself trying to do everything. And I think, you can absolutely overthink this and spend your time sort of, right, it's now 12:01, we must disrobe and go to this room with that couple, and now we've got to go and sample this lecture that's going on over here. And honestly, you could spend, you can organize your life that way, but the reality is, I think this community is fun and enjoyable and is talkative, and it's about finding out about other people and building new connections. And I think if you're too slavish to your routine, and this is coming from me who likes a routine, then you're going to miss out, and you're not going to enjoy the connections themselves. You're just going to be too worried about what you're doing next, and I wouldn't want anyone to go through an event like that.
Don't get shit-faced, don't forget.
An important thing.
It's so hard to get right. It's so hard not to drink because you're nervous, or drink to loosen up a bit, or drink because you're socialising. And we absolutely are guilty of that. I know we are, and I've done it way too many times to be any kind of expert at this. But I'm starting to get a bit better with it. I truly am. But it's so tempting to throw yourself into party mode and then just sweep drinks and drink. And then before you know it, you're either flat out somewhere, or you're sick, or you've missed half a night because you've had to go and bail early and go to sleep. I don't know, any number of permutations really of drinking too much can ruin your night, and it's a shame because you've looked forward to it for so long, and then you just go fuck it up for yourself.
Yep,
and I say for yourself because it's on you, isn't it? Like, you're responsible for how much you drink, so I can't blame anyone else.
She says, knocking back a nice glass of red,
staring at us both, going, responsibility, it's your responsibility.
It's responsible behaviour, isn't it? You don't want people's lasting memory of you to be pie-eyed down, hugging the porcelain basin of a club toilet. So there's better ways to remember me, I'm sure.
Right. So on that note, I think we can wrap things up. Thank you ever so much for joining us. It is always a pleasure. Where can people find you in the world?
swingingdownunder.com, because I still have not changed our domain to wanderlustswingers.com. It's not true. I actually do have the domain, and it's forwarded permanently to swingingdownunder.com, but it's just faster if you go there. So that's where you can find us.
And if anyone needs a business card, we've got fucking hundreds of them.
Anyone needs a business card, hit me up. I can send you one of those. No, it's been good. I hope people find that valuable. I hope people get something out of that, and hopefully it helps you to maybe have success at your next event, but feel a little bit more relaxed that, what you're thinking about, what you're going through, and what you're worrying about. Other people have thought about it. Other people have experienced it. And like we've explained many times, other people have fucked it up.
It's in our theme tune. Mrs. H, do you think?
Thank you for hopping into our bed.